Hello friends, and welcome to this NextJS course where I'll be teaching you how to use forms in your NextJS application. And in using these forms in your NextJS application, you're going to learn about the useActionState hook, the useFormState hook, and the useFormStatus hook. These are relatively newer hooks in NextJS, and they make our life easier. But a lot of people still find it a bit confusing to use these hooks. So today, I'm going to show you how to incorporate these hooks into your application, and you're going to see how they work. In the past, when we would work with forms in React applications or even in ordinary HTML and CSS applications, we would normally have the action attribute attached to our form, and this action attribute helps us send our form data to where they'll be processed and probably sent to a database. And we also have the onSubmit attribute that a function can take. And this onSubmit attribute runs and do some validations before the form actually gets submitted to the back end. And if the user has not filled in some of the forms correctly, the function that we've passed to this onSubmit attributes can actually help to detect that. Now, if everything works fine, we can now send the form data to the URL or to the place we've specified using the action attributes. And so this is how forms work generally. But in recent times, in NextJS applications, and with the advent of the server actions, we can just pass a function to the action attributes and we can take care of everything from there on. And by passing a server action to the action attribute of our form, we can also incorporate the useActionState hook, the useFormState hook, the useFormStatus hook to do some sort of validations and help us to submit a properly filled form to our database and perform any sort of manipulation that we want to perform on our form. Let's dive right into our VS Code and create a NextJS application and see how these things work together. Currently, I'm within my VS Code window and there is no currently opened project or folder. So what I'm going to do is come here, click on the Explorer and open folder, and I'm going to navigate to my desktop and open this NextJS form folder that I've created. So you can create your own folder anywhere you want to create it and then open it up in VS Code. So I'm going to click open and I have this welcome tab that I'm going to close off, and then I'm going to open the terminal. So you can click on Control backtick on your keyboard to open up the terminal within the VS Code. And right here within the terminal, if I'm to zoom in a bit, I'm going to type in npx create next app right here. So we say npx create next app to spin up a new NextJS application at latest, so that we have the latest version of NextJS. And I'm going to click on enter. And this project, when we create it, is going to be inside of the folder we've created, right? So it's asking what is the project named. I'm going to click on dot, and this means that I want my project to have the same name with my folder name. So it's going to have the name of NextJS form. So click enter on my keyboard and it's asking, would you like to use TypeScript? Yes. Would you like to use ESLint? Yes. Would you like to use Tailwind CSS? Yes. The SRC directory? No. And app router? Yes. Would you like to customize the default import alias? No. And then it starts to spin up a new NextJS application. And if we go right here, we can see that it's already spinning this up because we have all of this right here. So we're going to wait for it to spin up. But while it's doing that, we can just quickly go to the package.json. Right here, you can see right here we have Tailwind CSS, and that means we're going to use Tailwind CSS to style up our project. All right, and Tailwind CSS is just a very good way, the fastest way that I know to style up your NextJS application. I'm going to close off the package.json and I'm going to try to spin up our project. So I'm going to clear this off first, and then I'm going to say npm run dev. So this command is coming right here from our package.json. where you say next dev. So when we run this dev, it's going to spin up our application on a local host, usually on port 3000. That is the default host. All right. So I'm closing this off and this one. And yes, I'm going to click on enter and wait for the NextJS project to start up. Now you can see our project is already running on localhost 3000. So what I'm going to do first of all is close off this one and then try to minimize my VS Code window so that we can open up a web browser. And here is a web browser. I'm using the Safari browser, so I'm going to put everything side by side, and then we're going to visit the localhost to see the application that has been spinned up for us. Okay, so this is the NextJS application that we have right here. So let's see what is making this website. So we'll go to app right here. First of all, we have globals.css, and this globals.css contains some CSS settings, things that will make our CSS, our Tailwind CSS in this case, to run properly. So normally when you work with Tailwind CSS, you usually have these declarations right here with all of this default stuff when you spin up a new Next.js application. We'll go to the layout. This layout is going to be the root layout of our application. And let me zoom out a bit. Yes, I think this is better. And we have all of this, and right here we have this metadata. So this is just to set some title and description for your web page. Currently it's having create next app, so I'm going to change this one to NextJS form. I'm going to change this one to forms with Next.js. So every other thing here, I can just leave it as it is and save, and then come to the page. So this page right here is the main one responsible for this thing we're seeing on our web page. All right, so you can see the vessel image and everything. So what I'm going to do is just to delete everything from the main down here to the ending of the main. Meanwhile, my VS Code is zoomed so that you can see everything at once and clear. So the texts are a lot larger. So I'm going to have section like so. And within this section, I'm going to have an H1 that says, welcome to forms. So when I do that, you can see that this web page changes and we just have welcome to forms. And this one also, I'm going to make it a lot larger like this. And now I want to style up our H1 a bit to come to the center. So I'm just going to come to the H1 and give class names. And then I'm going to say something like text center so that we'll have the welcome forms to the center. And yeah, this is what we have. And now let's see how we can bring in our form to our page. Usually when we work with forms, we usually do that in a client component. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new folder, not within the app, just outside of the app within the project folder. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to create a folder called components, and make sure that your components is not within this app folder. So within the component, I'm going to create a file and I'm going to name it form.tsx. So I'm just going to use RFCA. And by the way, if this doesn't work for you, it must mean that you don't have the extension, this ES7 plus React Redux React Native snippet, so you can install it. And I'm also using ESLint, so my code gets formatted when I save. All right, so you can download these extensions, the ES7, the ESLint, and the Prettier to format your code. And of course, I have the Tailwind CSS IntelliSense and the simple React snippets. All right, so all these things are helping me to write my codes faster, so you can also download them. So right here we have this form here, and I'm going to save and then come here to the page. So right here within my page.tsx, I'm going to import that form. I'm going to click on enter and then form, and as soon as I start typing, you can see that VS Code suggests that this form is right here. Is it this one that we want to import? Yes, it is this one. So I can just click on enter and then it imports the form automatically for us. So I can have this as a self-closing component, and as soon as I save, then you can see we have form on the web page as well. So right here within the form, let's spin up a proper looking form. I don't want to be the one to write all of the HTML that will spin up our form for us. So what I can do is go grab some UI from very famous websites. So there is one called hyperui.dev, and you can see this website has already made components for us. If you want forms, you can find them here. We're looking for forms, right? So we can look for forms right here. So it has about 4 components. You can see what the form look like, all of the forms. All right, so I'm going to grab this one right here, the first one. I'm going to click on here and choose JSX, and then I'm going to say view. You can see what it looks like. All right, so these are just divs with class names. Of course, these are Tailwind CSS class names. So, and since we're working with Tailwind CSS, this is already very good for us. Copy JSX. So I'm going to bring in right here into our form.tsx. What I'm going to do is to remove this one and open up parentheses and have this one like this. And within here, within the React fragment, I'm going to paste our code and save. So now that we've saved, let's go to our page and see what we have. All right, this is what we have, an elegant looking form, although it's a lot larger because I have zoomed a bit. So I'm going to take it back in. So we'll see what we have. Yeah, this is what we have. And this is already looking very great. Get started today and all this lorem text. And we have the email, password, and sign in. So let's edit this form a little bit. Right here, we have the lorem ipsum. So I'm going to take that away and just say, please fill in the form. And right here, we have email here. I can leave it as email. We also have password. I can leave it as password. And then for this no account sign up, I think I should just take it out. I don't want to have it there. And for the sign in, instead of saying sign in, I'm just going to say submit. So as soon as I save, now this is what we have. All right. And currently, if you look here, you can see that it says heads up, we should have this plugin if we want our forms to work correctly. So we're going to install this Tailwind CSS/forms plugin. So I'm going to open up my terminal right here, and I'm going to create another one since this one is running our application. So I'm going to click on plus, and then I'm going to say npm install, and then copy all of this like this and paste right here and enter. So it's going to install this stuff right here for us. Okay, it's already installed. So I'm going to close off the terminal. And then we should come to our plugins within the tailwind.config.ts. So this file shows some configuration for our Tailwind CSS. So right here is exposing all of these pages where Tailwind should look for class names and all of that. Okay. And it's just setting some background image and all of that right here. So within here, we should have the plugin that we just installed. So I'm going to say require and then open parentheses and have that plugin within these quotation marks, Tailwind CSS forms right here, and save. So by putting this here, our forms is going to work correctly. I'm going to close this off. And right now we just have this sort of input for email and password. Let me try to bring in another set of inputs. Let me go look for a select input. So I'm going to go back to the UI right here and let me search for select. I hope it has select. So let me see. Let's see if it has select. Yes, it has select. And right here, we have this one. Very simple, right? So I'm going to change this one to JSX and then copy JSX and go back to our forms. And I want to paste it somewhere after the password. All right. So I'm going to have, this is the password. This is a D for the password. And I think the text are a lot larger. So I'm going to make them a bit smaller again. Yeah. So we have this. So this div ends the password. And after this one, I'm going to have the select right here. So I save and you can see the select comes here and you can see there is this headliner right here. I'm going to change it to something that says hobbies. So let me write a list of hobbies and I can see that the text is gray. I don't want the text to be gray, rather I want it to be something like white since it's against this dark background. So I'm going to say text white, and yeah, it has changed to white. And right here, let's change some of these hobbies. So I'm going to say chess. Yeah, I like to play chess. And for this one, I'm going to say draft. I like to play the game of draft as well. And this one, I'm going to say badminton. Yeah, I'm a badminton pro. And this one, I'm going to say code. Oh, I love to code. And this one, I'm going to say NextJS. Oh, NextJS is the king. And right here, I'm going to say tailwind. Oh, this is not actually a hobby, right? So let's say eat. I love to eat as well. And the last one, I'm going to say read. So I love to read as well. So I'm going to change these ones. And now if we click on here, you can see we have these things to select the hobbies. All right, so this is a pretty looking form. Yeah, a very good one at that. And we have the submit button. Now let's think about how forms work in general. Normally when you fill in your form and you feel something wrongly, right, you should have some sort of validations. And when you click submit, something should tell you if you've done something wrong and all of that. But first of all, I see that the text right here is not appearing. So let's see why that is so. So let's go for the email. So let's see if we have the text. So right now we found the input for the email. So I'm going to make it a text of black. So since it's inside of a white background, right? So it makes sense to say black and save. Yeah. So now that it's saved as black, it's coming on here. And for that of the password, yeah, this is the password. This is the D for the password. This is the label for the password. And right for the input, I'm going to say text black as well and save. So now if we're entering the password here, we can see that something is right there. I think the hobbies is okay. If we select something, yeah, we can see it right here. All right. When we click on submit, we should at least have something loading to show us that something is actually happening, so that we don't have to click on the submit button again and again, right? So we want to display some sort of loader, something rotating around in a circle to indicate that here our form is submitting, or we can just say submitting, that sort of thing. So how do we do that? Now in Next.js, we're going to use the useFormStatus. We're going to use it together with the submit button to display some sort of loading indicator when we click our form, when we submit the form. All right. So I'm going to look for this button. This button is from here, and this is a div. So I'm going to grab this whole thing out of here, and I'm going to create a new component for the button. It is weird, but this is how it works in Next.js. We have to create a different component for the button. So I'm going to come right here in our components folder and create a file called button.csx, and I'm going to run the RFC like this, and then within here I'm going to paste all of those code that we copied right from there. So I'm going to click on save, and then we have it right here. Now I'm going to use the useFormStatus. And how do I do that? I'm going to come right here. First of all, I'm going to just type the name useFormStatus right here, and you can see it's coming from React DOM. So as soon as I click that, it imports it automatically for me. All right, so this useFormStatus, I'm going to save it in a variable. So I'm going to say const useFormStatus is equals this. Oh, I'm using the same name, right? That's my bad. Let me just say useStatus is equals useFormStatus like this. Now I'm doing it this way so I can show you what this useFormStatus returns to us. Okay, now I'm going to come down here and say console.log useStatus like this and save. So I'm going to click the control and backtick, and let me refresh this. I'm yet to actually save this form and bring in the button actually. So I'm going to come right here and bring in the button right from here, and that imports it automatically for us right here. You can see the button is right here. So now I'm going to save, and there is a problem. Next.js is telling us that you're importing a component that needs useFormStatus, and it only works in a client component. And that means that this, our button, should be a client component since we're using the useFormStatus. And remember, in Next.js, especially from version 13 up, we now have the client component and the server component. And whenever we use hooks such as the useState, useEffects, and all of those hooks, we're going to make sure that the component we're using it in is a client component. So right here at the top, I'm going to have a useClient directive, and that solves the problem for us. So now let me refresh this page one more time. Yeah, so everything is working correctly. I'm trying to find the thing we're logging to the console. Oh, it's not right here. It should be within our server right here. And you can see it has logged it on a lot of times. So you can see that this useFormStatus right here has this object right here, and the object has pending, which is false, data, which is null, method, which is null, and action, which is null. This object is attached to the useFormStatus. All right, so that means we can quickly destructure some of the things from here if we need them. And we're going to make use of the pending right here, which is false by default. So let me take away this console.log statement right here. And then I'm going to destructure the pending right here. So I'm just going to destructure pending. Let me close this off. We're going to use this pending to determine when our form is still submitting and then display something while it is still submitting. And once it is done submitting, then the loader disappears. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So in this case, I'm just going to take everything off from here, from this button, and then I'll bring in JavaScript or TypeScript if you like. So I'm going to say something like pending. We're going to check if pending is false. So is pending false? If it's false, then let us display something. We're going to display this button right here, or else we're going to display something else. So I'm going to say Ctrl V. Now what is happening here? We're checking if pending is true actually, then we're going to make this button right here to display. In this case, you can have whatever thing you want to display, some piece of UI, some icons to display if pending is true. And if pending is false, then we're going to have this second thing displayed here. So for this one, if it's true, I want to have submitting right here. And if it's false, then let it just be submit right here. I'm going to say submitting ... just to imitate something submitting. So I'm going to save this one and then come back right here and refresh. I think everything refreshes. So let me click on submit. So right now we're not able to see anything because this is probably happening very fast and we're not going to see anything. But let's say we try to slow down our network and all of that, then we're going to say that submitting displayed right here, the one with ... to indicate that something is being submitted. But yeah, this is how we can use the useFormStatus. Now, the next thing to note is when we fill in our forms, right, we should be able to tell the user if there are problems and all of that before we actually send the data to the database, so that we don't make unnecessary calls to the database when the user has not actually filled in the data correctly. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use the useFormState to actually help us out, and we're going to see how it works. So right here within the form, I'm going to call the useFormState like so, and now that I call it, it gets imported for me automatically and it's coming from React DOM. So how does this useFormState work? Now we're going to say const and then create this like this, and within this square bracket we're going to have something called state, and then we're going to have action. Mind you, you can call this state whatever you like. It could be anything you want, but this state actually represents the state of the form you're filling. So if, for example, there are some errors and everything, this state is the one that will hold it, and you can grab the error and display it to the user or display some useful information to the user, and then user can refill the form or correct the form before submitting again. And this action is now the server action that will be called when we submit this form. Okay, and for this useFormState, we're going to have the server action. Right now we've not created any server action, but I'm going to call mine form submit like so, and have a comma, and then I'm going to have null right here. So what's happening here is that null is going to represent the state, the current state right here, and action is this form submit here. So now it's time to create this form action. Now go back here, and outside of the component, outside of the app, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it actions and enter. And within actions, we're going to create submit form.action.ts like so. So this is going to be our file that will have a server action that we want to use on this form. In this case, we want to name it form submit, right? So we'll go back here and say export async function form submit. And right here at the top, I'm going to give a use server directive. So I'm going to say use server. And within this, we're going to run a lot of things that we want to run when we submit the form. Now I'm just going to say console.log submitted. Now let's go back and save this file. Oh, right now we're having an error. It's saying you're importing a component that needs useFormState. It only works in a client component. All right, and that is true. We're using useFormState, and that means we have to make our forms right here a client component as well. So we have the use client directive right here, and everything comes back to normal. And now let me open up the terminal, and we'll be able to see that as soon as we click on submit right here, we should get something logged on to the console for us. In this case, we should have this submitted logged onto the console, right? But when I click, nothing is happening. And why is that? That's because we've not added the action to the form. So what I'm going to do right here, we're going to say action. And remember, this action is right here. So we're saying that when we submit this form, the action should run. And what's the action? The action is this form submit right here. And what is this form submit going to do? It's just going to log something to the console currently. All right. So I'm going to go back to the form.tsx and save this. Now, when I click on submit, you can see we have submitted right here. It means that our server action is running. When we click it, we don't necessarily see for a long time that submitting that we talked about. But if you look closely, you can see it's running very fast. And that's because this submit form action is not actually doing a lot, right? So everything is running pretty fast. So we can just see it as a flash, right? Yeah, and that is our button running correctly using the useFormStatus. And in real case scenario, when we're using this form and we're using the useFormStatus, if the server is taking time to come back to us, or is taking time to deal with the form, we're going to have that submitting loading right here for sure. Okay. All right. So going back to the form, the TSX, this is what we have. Now, the next thing is to talk about how to do some sort of validation, because if I come right here to the email and type some rubbish like this and come to the password, type anything I want to type. In fact, I'm not going to choose anything for the hobby and submit. You'll still see that submitted gets logged onto the console. There's been a lot of submitted logged onto the console. So what I'm going to do is actually try to clear this. So I'm going to stop my server and clear everything. I'm going to stop it with Ctrl+C and then clear to clear everything. And I'm going to start the server one more time. So I'm going to say npm run dev, and it's going to start up again. Okay, I just wanted us to see that submitted right there. So I'm going to refresh this page. Yes, reload. Now I'm not even going to type anything, and I click on submit, and you can see submitted right here has been run without any checks and without any errors telling us that we've not filled the email, we've not entered any password, and we've not selected any hobby. All right, so now it's time for us to deal with that, and we're going to do that right within the submit form action. So first of all, we're going to describe some rules that this form should abide by. And how do we do that? I'm going to first of all create a folder right here, another new folder. Remember, don't create it inside the app folder or the components or the actions. Now is another folder inside of the main NextJS form project that we're working on. We're going to create a lib folder. So I'm going to click on plus right here and call it lib. And within this folder, we're going to create a file, and I'm going to call the file formrules.ts. So I'm going to say formrules.ts like this. And right here, we're going to use a library called Zod to actually write some of the code that will help us to check for errors on our page. And Zod is used for validations. It's one of the things that it is best used for, a great library. So if I come here, right here, let me try to visit Zod. So it says Zod.dev right here, and we can see everything about Zod. Let me go to introduction. And you can see that it says Zod is a TypeScript first schema declaration and validation library. I'm using the term schema to broadly refer to any data type from a simple string to a complex nested object. So what that means is that Zod can help us to actually do some validations, know when we're not writing the proper email, when we're not writing the proper password, when we're not selecting or filling in an input on our web form. So in order to use Zod, I'm going to come over here right here. Let me clear everything, and I'm going to say npm install Zod. So Zod is going to install for us, and right here it is installed. I'm going to close this one off again, and so right here I'm going to say import, and then Z is going to come from Zod. So with this Z, we're going to do a lot of things. All right. So within our form rules.txt, I'm going to export a function that will help us to do the validation things. I'm going to say export. I'm going to use a fat arrow function. So I'm going to say const sign up form schema is equals, I'm going to use z.object, like so. You can see VS Code is actually suggesting these things to us. So within these curly braces, we're going to give all of the things that has to do with this form. So we're going to bring in the email, the password, and the hobbies as well. So what I'm going to say here is for the email, this is what the email should abide by. So I'm going to say z.string, like so. So this right here is just saying that the email that we have on our form should be a string to start with. You probably haven't used Zod before, but it's quite simple to use, and sometimes it can get a bit complex, but if you follow the rules, you'd be able to get the hang of it. Right now we have this email input right here, okay, and we know we have it because it should have a name of email. All right, so I should come here actually and say name. We should give it email, like so. In fact, let me do it for the other ones. For the password, where is the password here? So I'm going to say name should be password, like so. And then for the hobbies, I can say name should be hobbies, actually, not headlines, hobbies, like so. And we can also give it IDs, ID of hobbies, and ID of password, and ID of email for this one as well. Okay, and save and come back to our form rules. So we're saying that the email should be a string, and then we should also make some other checks, and we say email like this. So this email is going to help us to write some validations that will check this email right here. So for example, we need the email to be having the character art, this art symbol right here, right? We need the email to have it. So this is where we can do that. We can actually try to tell the browser what this email should have. And all of this is already contained in this email right here, along with some other validations. If you go to Zod, you're going to see that. So, but by writing this email and opening parentheses, we're going to check for these art symbols and some other things that are associated with writing a proper email. And if the person has not given a proper email, we want to display a message right here that says, please write a proper email, or please include art symbol in your email. So I'm going to say, please include art symbol in your email, like so. And then we can also use another function and say .trim. So this trim is actually going to help us to trim extra spaces on the left, on the right, and all of that stuff. All right, so I'm going to save this. So this one is the validation for the email. So the email that we're going to type here should follow these validations, otherwise we're going to get an error. Now the next thing is to do for that of the password. So after the email right here, I'm going to give a comma, and then I'm going to say password, and then I'm going to say z.string, and of course the password should also be a string, right? And password should have a minimum character. So I'm going to say min and open this like this, and I can see some red lines under this. Oh, that's because we're writing this outside of the curly braces. So I'm going to take it inside here and paste it back. This one shouldn't be here. Let's see. We're going to delete this one and put it back right here. Okay, let me see. Yeah, and so we're going to provide some arguments to this minimum function right here. So a password should be a minimum of 8 characters. That's what it means right here. And if it's not up to 8 characters, then we should provide a message to the user. So we're going to say message is going to be, please make your password up to 8 characters, like this. All right, so we have string, the password must be a string, and the password must have a minimum of 8 characters, or else get this message back to them. And we can also say that the password should contain some characters, like uppercase characters, lowercase characters, and some special characters. And for that, we're going to use regex. And I've actually asked ChatGPT to write some regex for me, I'm going to come here and go to ChatGPT, and this is how you can actually use ChatGPT in your work. So I'm going to say write a Zod validation for checking a password to include at least an uppercase, a lowercase, special symbol, and have up to 8 characters. Oh, okay. So I said mod, not Zod. So this is wrong. I'm going to copy this and paste it right here again. Let me paste this and change this to Zod. I made a mistake and it's writing something else for me. So Zod validation. Let me also tell you that it's my NextJS application. I'm not perfect for prompts, but I guess ChatGPT should be wise enough to know this. All right, so to create the Zod validation and everything, let me see what it's going to give us. Okay, you can see it's giving us the same thing: the string, that max, that refine, and all of this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to copy this code that it has given me and paste it right here. So you can see this one is going to check for the value password must contain at least one uppercase letter, password must include at least one lowercase letter, and password must include at least one special symbol. Yeah, this is good. So I've already written the string and the main, okay? And I'm going to paste this one right here and see what I have. Okay, there shouldn't be a comma here. So yeah. And this is what we have. So you can see you can also use ChatGPT to help our lives, to make our coding life easier. All right, so this is the sign up form schema. This is the rule that the form that we have right here should follow. And now the next thing is to make sure that the form actually follows that rule. So we'll go here, right here inside of our action, and we're going to import these rules right here, the sign up form schema. So right here, to import it again, I'm going to use my shorthand way of doing this. I'm going to say sign up form schema, and as soon as I choose it, it's going to get imported for me automatically, and I can just have it right here and save. So when we submit this form, when we click on the submit button right here, we should get access to all of the data that we filled in for the email, for the password, for the hobbies. And we'll also get the value for the state, which initially is null. So going back to the action right here, I'm going to get the state right here, and it should be of a type form state. You can call it form state. And then I'm going to get form data, which should be of a type form data. I'm going to write a type for this state. So I'm going to say export type, and I'm going to say form state. And it's going to be equals to an object like this of error. And if error exists, yeah, we're going to have the error as an object like this. And this error is going to have email, and I'm going to say it's going to be string, an array of string like this. And then we have a password, which should also be a string. In fact, all of them, they're going to be arrays of strings. And we're also going to have hobbies like this, and it should also be string like this. We're also going to have something like a message, probably a message that we can display to the user right there if we want. And it's also going to just be a string, not an array of string, and we'll save. So this is what the form state we're going to be getting back to the user would look like. Currently, that form state right here is null. We're setting it to null. You can as well make it something like this, undefined, null, but I just want to make it null. And you can see there's been this red line under here, and I'm going to talk about this one pretty soon, but let's just continue with what we're doing. So right here we have access in the action, in the form action, the form submit action. We have access to the form data, and we have access to the state, which initially will be null when we submit this form. And I'm going to grab the form data to actually display first of all. So I'm going to say const so that I can show you that we can actually get the form data when we submit our form. Data is equals form data like this. And let me save, and we can console this form data. So I'm going to say form data like this. So now let's open up the terminal in the VS Code and go right here. So let's refresh. I think it's already refreshed. And as soon as I click on submit, now you see that we get that form data, and you can see we have name here, email, and the value is empty because we did not enter any value. The password has empty value because we did not enter any value, and the hobbies is also empty because we did not choose anything right here. Okay, but at least we know that our form action is working because we have all this displayed here. So that proves that we can actually get the form data that we submitted. So if I were to type something like anything right here, choose whatever, and submit this form again. Okay, we're not getting it right here. Let me refresh this one and type something again, anything we want to type, and select draft and submit. And we should have it coming here. But why is that not happening? Oh, because we're probably having this validation right here, but this validation is coming from the normal form we have on our page. If you look here, you can see we have type email, right? Type email. Let me actually remove this and save and refresh this form again and have email and select something and submit. We're having it right here. So we have JH, all this one right here. Actually, I'm going to clear this again. I'm going to stop this and clear everything so we can see everything clearly. I'm going to make this a lot larger, and let's fill in this form one more time. So I'm going to say Dominic, and let me say LDix as my password. And of course, this eye icon is not working at the moment. It's not been implemented. And for these hobbies, I'm going to select draft and let me submit. And we're yet to start up our application, right? So let me say, in fact, if I refresh this, you can see the application will be gone. So I need to restart this. So npm run dev, and it's going to start it up again on local server 3000 port 3000. And now we're back, and I'm going to enter just about anything, enter LDX, and then choose something, chess, and submit. And you can see we have all of the things we entered here. For the hobbies, instead of having chess, I'm seeing JM right here. I don't know why that is. Maybe we had a default value on the hobbies. So let's check it out and let's go to the hobbies. Oh yeah, we have these values right here. So I'm going to make this one chess. I'm going to make this one draft. I'm going to make the other one badminton. I'm going to make the other one coding or coding. I'm going to make this one NextJS. I'm going to make this one eat. I'm going to make this one read and save. So now when we submit our form again, we're going to get those values in the proper way. So let me refresh and enter email, Dominic, and password, and select the hobby. Let me select drafts and submit. Now you can see right here, let me see, we have Dominic, we have this rubbish as password, and we have draft selected. So we're getting our values. All right, but now it's time to check those values we're getting and make sure that they follow the rules that we've written here with the help of the sword. Currently, you can see we're able to submit the form, and let's see how we can use this rule to check for what we're submitting and then display to the user. And we should also know that if for any reason the user did not fill in the values properly, then we shouldn't submit to a database and all of that. That's the whole point of getting the form data here and running some checks with the form rules that we have right here. So let's try to do that now. So now that we know we can get our data right here, let's actually bring in our sign up form schema to do some validations on those data for us. So I'm going to declare a variable right here. So I'm going to say const validation, and validation is going to be equals sign up form schema right here. Is already imported right here, and then we're going to pass an object to it, and then we're going to say check the email, because in the rules we have email, we have password, right? And we don't have the hobbies. Yeah, now I'm just saying that we don't have the hobbies, so we need to implement that of the hobbies. So I'm going to say down here hobbies, and hobbies is going to be z dot string. Of course, it's going to be string dot trim if there is anything to trim for that matter. All right, this is what we're going to have for hobbies, because these hobbies, the user is not actually entering it by himself. We already have a set of hobbies for the user to choose from. Okay, so we can just do it like this. Just make sure it's a string and just trim anything off it. All right, going back to the form action. So we're going to say email, then we get the form data dot get. So we want to get something, and what do we want to get? We want to get the email. Okay, saying that this expression is not callable. Well, I'll see what that means in a moment. So we have email.formData.get email right here, and we can put a comma, and then we're going to say for the password. So password will be formData.get password. And lastly, we're going to have the hobbies. So we're going to say hobbies will be formData.get hobbies. And these values that we're passing here, the email string here, the password, we'll make sure that it's the same thing we've passed here as name, hobbies, and right here for the password as name, password, and right here for the email, we also have email for the name, email. All right, make sure it's the same spelling, otherwise there'll be problems. So we'll go back to this one, and this is the validation that we want to have. And it's saying this expression is not, oh, that's true, because we need to say sign up form schema dot save parse like this. Yeah, so this save parse is a function that will now help us to check the inputs we're getting from our form. So for the email, we're going to pass it this email. For the password, which is right here, this password right here, we're going to pass it our password, the form data.get password right here. And for the hobbies, this one, which is exactly right here, this hobbies, we're going to pass it this one, the form data.get hobbies. Now, after getting the validation, and remember this validation is sign up form schema.save parse. So it's going to return something from Zod. It's going to return a success message. This is directly from Zod. So we're going to check if it doesn't return success. That means something is wrong with our form. Okay, so we're going to check if validation.success. You can see there is a dot success, but we're going to say not. So it means if something went wrong with the form that the user has filled, if the user had filled in some things correctly, now we want to return something back to them to be displayed on the web page if we like. So I'm going to give them an error. I'm going to say errors like this. I'm going to say validation.error.flatten. And this flatten is a function again from Zod, which is just going to make everything easier for us. It's going to get those objects and flatten it for us. Flatten meaning, for example, if we have an object, we can say, instead of saying error and having this object right here, we can say error.email, error.password, error.hobbies. All right. So that's what flatten is kind of going to do for us. But just know that even if you don't understand that, what it means is that we're going to make it easier to access wherever the error is coming from and try to display a message to the user. Okay, .flatten.field errors like this. Okay, so this is what we're going to return. We're going to return errors to the user. And of course, if this validation.success, if it's not true, that means if there is a problem, the function returns. That's why we have this return value right here. But if everything goes on well, if the user has filled in the form correctly, they will want to go on to do other things. So I'm going to say do other things. For example, we want to connect to a database. For example, let me put this in comments. So these are the kind of things we can actually do. We can connect to a database. We can probably fetch data from an API, and we can do other things. But this code right here, the code from this point onward, will only run if there is no error from the form that the user has filled right there. And this sign up form schema, I think I can take it out. It was just there for demonstrative purposes at the beginning. So I'm going to save this. And in fact, I'm going to log something to the console, something that should happen if everything actually went right, if the user has filled in everything correctly and this validation has returned success. instead. All right, so I'm going to say console.log connecting to database. So just bear in mind that we're only going to see this console.log statement if there are no errors on our web page. Okay, so now we're going to test things out. Let's see, here we're having an error, or the form submit error, and we're having this error because currently we're using useFormState, and this useFormState is deprecated in React already, and instead we should use something called useActionState instead. But this one is still going to give us an error, and let's save and see, we'll get an error. And the reason is because this useActionState is still not stable. If you look at our package.json right here, where is the package.json? Let's find it. Right here, you can see we are using React 18, but I believe this useActionState works from React 19, but is meant to exactly replace the useFormState. So if we go right here and check React.dev, for example, and search for useFormState, let me see if I'm going to say it. Okay, so you can see right here, it says useActionState accept the function, the action, and everything. And you can see this is React 19. This is a canary version, I think, of React 19. Meanwhile, we're still on React version 18 inside of the current version of NextJS. So that is what is actually conflicting right here. We cannot use the useActionState because it is still being worked upon, and NextJS is yet to have the React 19 in the latest implementation. I think the newer version or the latest version of NextJS will be out by next week from the time of recording this video. And by that time, you should have this useActionState. So we'll be able to use this useActionState instead. But for now, we're going to use the useFormActionState like so. And it's still going to give us this error. So what we're going to do is right here at the top, we're going to have TS no check declaration, so we don't have that error anymore, but we should have useFormState. So if I save now and go back to the web page, you can see everything comes back. But if we were to use the useStateAction or useActionState like so and save, we still get error even though we have this declaration right here. Okay, so let's take it back to useFormState, and by the time the newest version of NextJS is out, then we should be able to use the useActionState instead, because that is meant to replace the useFormState. You can see even here, you can say this feature is available in the latest canary version right here. Okay, so it is not yet fully implementable. That's just the reason. Okay, so let me close this off, and now let's go on with our useFormState. All right, so we're done implementing this, and let's test things out and see if we're going to get this console.log right here, the one that says connecting to database. Because remember, again, like I said, we're only going to see this console.log statement if everything has gone well, if the validation has gone well. That means if the user has filled in things correctly. Okay, now let's come here and refresh one more time, and let's put an email, and let me open up my terminal right here, and let me type something like this. This is not a proper email. At least it's not following the rules that we declared here, right? And let me choose draft and let me submit. Okay, yeah, we're submitting, but right here you can see any console log that says connecting to database, which means errors were returned. But at the same time, we can't see those errors on our web form. We're not displaying anything to the user that's saying that, hey, you have some errors here, you're not typing the correct email, or you're not typing your email correctly, or you're not choosing a good password for your account, or you've not selected a hobby, and all of that stuff. So now it's time to display those errors for our users. And we're going to do that right in form.tsx right here. So under the email, after the email input right here, let's see if we can display it here. Right here after the div, we can display an error. So we can say if state exists, because remember, state is initially null right here. So we're saying if state exists, so we're going to put a question mark. Then we have to access the error on the state. And then if that error also exists, then we have to say email. You can see we have this suggestion for us: email, hobbies, password. So this time I'm going to choose the email right here. So if this thing exists, then we want to return a piece of UI to the user. In this case, we want to return a div. So we're going to return this div to the user, and we're going to say something like, let's give a p tag like so, and we're going to give in curly braces like this. We're going to say state.errors.email like so. So as soon as we do that, you can see that error comes here. The error message says, please include @symbol in your email. I can see that is exactly the same thing that I have right here. Okay, and to make it more interesting, I can add a class name to this paragraph, and I can say text red, because that's the color you usually have error messages. I'm going to choose 400 and save. And next time we're going to have errors, you see that it's going to be in red. And so that's for the email. Now what about the password? So let's go for that of the password after right here, and this is where the D for the password ends. Yeah, so I'm going to have that error message displayed here. So I'm going to say state, if it exists, then .errors, if it exists, .password, like so. So if it exists, we're going to return a piece of UI as well. And what are we going to return? We're going to return a div also. And within this div, what we want to say is, for the password must be the following. I'm going to put a colon like this. Now remember, for our rules, we have so many things for our password. We have to make sure that our password is a string. Our password has a minimum of 8 characters. Our password has A to Z values, at least lowercase values. It has uppercase values, at least one of each. So we can just loop through and return the errors. So after this div, we can have something that says UL. So we can return the UL like this. And within that, we can say if state.errors.password, then .map. So of course it's going to exist because we already checked that here. If state exists and error, so we want to map through the errors and then return something. So we're going to provide a fat arrow function right here and return something. So what do we want to return? We can just return li, the li tags like this. And each li must have a key prop because we're mapping through something, and each key will be error, each of the error here that we're accepting right here. Okay, right, so we'll map through those errors, and for each error we're going to return this list right here. So let me save this first of all to have a more structured view, and we're going to map and get those error here. We're going to display the error like so. So that's it for the password. And for the hobbies as well, I think it's going to be similar to the email. Let me see, where did I do for that of the emails? I'm just going to copy this and paste it right after for the hobbies. In this case, I'm going to change this one to hobbies. So if hobbies exists, and then we should say hobbies right here. And for this list, I think I did not make them red, so I'm going to include a class name, and I'm going to say text red, 400, 500, anyone you want. I'm going to save. All right, so now let's test things out. I'm going to come to the email, and I'm going to give a proper mail, dominic@eldix.com. All right, this is a proper email. And for the password, I'm going to give a proper password to the one having lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and a special character. And for the hobbies, I'm going to select chess. Now you can see I've filled in everything correctly. Before I submit, let me open up my terminal right here. And you can see right here, we don't have any console.log statement at the moment. So let me submit this and say, okay, now I submitted, and it's telling me that password is required. And that means that we have an error on the password. We probably have not filled in the password correctly. We've not chosen the right way of writing password. And in which case we can return a more proper message, something that makes more sense for the user, not just required. It's saying password must be the following required. So password is required, but we provided a password right here. What I'm going to try to do is to actually try to take away these definitions that I have here. It is probably the reason why the password thing is not working. So I'm going to place with this regex right here, the one I have currently, and I'm going to use .trim to trim everything and save. And we're still having some errors about the password. The validations are working. This password has been giving problems, and that means I'll have to do something. Maybe what I can do is actually to take these ones off to just see that we see this message right here, the one that says connecting to database if everything works well. So for now, let me just comment out everything first of all and just make sure that it's only a string like so and save. All right, so that we can just pass this text. Maybe there is something I'm missing currently. Now let's try again. So I'm going to say dominic@email.com, and for password I'm just going to write anything as long as it's a string, right? And for the hobbies I'm going to select chess and submit. Oh, and it's still saying password required. That means there must be a serious issue. All right, let's see one more time. We're having state.errors. Oh, right here we're missing an S. It's supposed to be password like this, not password with a single S. And I think that's the reason we've been having the errors we've been having, or the not following the rules we've laid down properly. So I'm going to go back to the form rules and then bring these ones back and save. So right now everything should work properly. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to say dominic@ldix.com, and I'm going to, for the password, I'm going to say dom, and I'm going to say ldix. I'm going to have some numbers. I'm going to have a special character of dollars, and for the hobbies I'm going to say badminton and click. And right now we have an error. Let's see. Undefined is not an object evaluating state.errors.password.map. All right, so back to where we had, I think that was where we had the issues. Let me see. And that's because we're not saying that if it exists. So I'm going to say states like this, .errors right here. That should solve it, because we're here saying that if states exist or if errors exist, but without adding the question marks, it means that it exists. And right here, it is null, or there are no errors at all when we submit the form, right? So, and we're saying that it should come only when we exist. Without the question marks, they will come right there. Now, let's try one more time. Oh, this password has given us some trouble, but I'm glad we solved this together, so you can see how we can debug applications together. These things happen in real-time coding. All right, so I'm going to enter email again, dominic@ldix.com. Now, password, I'm going to say dom ldix, and I'm going to say dollars for special symbols, and there are more than 8, okay, characters. And for the hobbies, I'm going to select chess. And let's see now, we're going to get this connecting to database, which means that everything has been followed properly. Okay, so let's cross our fingers and click on submit. Okay, we're still having these errors. Undefined is not an object evaluating state errors to and what have you. Oh my god, why is this one giving us so much problems? Let's debug it together. Now, coming here, we can see we have password right here. Okay, so that means we should make it password. Should have double S. Okay, and save. And let's get back to the form actions. Let's see what we have right there. Password. Okay, password. All right, password. Okay, I think things are set up more correctly now. Yep, I think we're setting this up. Now let's try one more time. Okay, so I'm going to, I've saved and I'm going to refresh, and hopefully this is going to work now. Let's go dominic@ldix.com, and then for the password I'm going to have 2024, and I'm going to have special characters for dollars with dollars, and I'm going to choose chess. And now let's get ready and see. Okay, all right, so we've submitted and no errors. And let's see if we have, yes, right here we have it connecting to database right here. And that's what we've done here. We've said it should connect to the database, and we're getting this form data because we're still logging it right here. So you can see everything has worked properly because we've followed the form rules that we've defined here in this sign up form schema. So you can see how we can do validations in real time. And in fact, let's do that one more time. I'm going to reload these and just type anything I want and select something, and yeah, please include that symbol. And that's how we're going to do some validations in our form. And sometimes when the form gets through successfully, we can actually reset the form, because if you notice, if we submit our form correctly, if everything goes on fine and we have connecting to database and other codes running, then we want to reset the form so that the user can type in new things, right? Currently, when we type an email, for example, Dominic, let me make this in lowercase letters, at ldix.com, and then we have password, and then let me have some numbers, and let me have some special characters. Let me use dollars as special characters, and I'm going to select drafts. Now, when I click on submit, it goes through. We're going to say there will be no errors. Bring this down. All right, so let's go to the terminal. There will be no errors when I submit. Yeah, it's submitted, and you can see it had that submitting right here, It was very fast, but we saw it, right? And then it's submitted and connected to database, but the data that we filled here, we still have them here. So what we want to do is to clear off those data, and we can use useRef to do that. So we can come right here and we can create a useRef. You can use the useRef hook. So I'm going to say useRef and use my special way to import it. So it's imported right here and it's coming from React, and it's going to be of type HTML form element. Okay, since we're using TypeScript like this, and just going to have null at the initial time, null, not nullable, and I'm going to store this in a variable. So I'm going to say const formRef is equals this useRef like this. Okay, so I'm now going to come to my form and give it a ref attribute. So I'm going to say ref is equals, and I'm going to give it the form ref that we just created, and then I'm going to use useEffect. So I'm going to call useEffect again. I'm going to call it like this, and it is going to get imported for me automatically, and you can see it's also coming from React. So I'm going to call this and then provide a function that should run. Okay, and what function do I want to run? I want to check now if there are no errors. That means if everything went well, then we want to clear the data that the user has typed here all along. So we're going to say if not state dot errors like this. So if we don't have any errors, then we should do something, right? So we want to say formRef right here dot current dot reset. So we want to reset our form if there are no errors, which means everything went on well, got submitted to the database and all of that. So let's save these, and now let's try to do the same thing again. Let's try to write our email ldix.com, and then let's have a password, and then let's have numbers, let's have characters. I'm going to use dollars again, and then I'm going to select a hobby. So everything should go on well, right? Everything should go on well. Let me submit, and as soon as I submit, you can see we have something logged onto the console, and our form got cleared off, and we can type in something else. We can sign up again, assuming we're a new user and all of that stuff. But if we type in the wrong thing, and here we see that the email is not correct, right? And choose chairs and submit, it means it's not going to get submitted, and that means our form will not be cleared. So it only gets cleared if everything went on well, which is what we want, right? So that, my friends, brings us to the end of this course in Next.js. I'm sure by now you already know how to use the useFormState and the useFormStatus. The useFormState is just the same thing as the useActionState right here. It's just the same thing as the useActionState, but I think it will be more stable in the next version of Next.js. For now, we can just use useFormState, and then you can just use this directive right here to ignore the TypeScript check for this file. Hey then, my friends, that's it for this particular course. Right in the description below, I'm going to have the link to the GitHub files. So you're going to find the codes that I've used for this particular project in that GitHub repository. See you next time.